The sky above Velar burned violet, and the ground trembled with each new blast from orbit. In the distance, the great crystal towers of the capital city Tavalin crumbled into glowing ash. Ships screamed overhead, some Valari, most hollow trailing fire as they fell to the planet like dying birds. The air was thick with smoke, static, and the scent of melted stone. All around the surviving Valari, despair crept like a shadow. Their technology had failed, their fleets were gone, and the last of their cities were being hunted by creatures without form, hollow soldiers that moved like liquid, struck like lightning, and left nothing alive. And now in the final chamber, beneath the sacred mountain of Sirith, the council stood in a ring, cloaked in fear and shame, staring at a signal beacon no one had dared activate for centuries. A beacon that reached across forbidden space to a world that had been locked away. In myth and warning, Earth, the Death World. Elder Varen's voice cracked through the silence like a blade. We do not summon them. Not now. Not ever. The records are clear where humans go. Death follows. They were exiled from the Council of Stars for a reason. But young Eris, barely out of her training robes, stepped forward with fire in her voice. And the Hollow have not brought death, they've brought extinction. We sent messages to the Morinari, the Zephyra, even the Krolton Armada. None answered. Only Earth remains. What choice do we have now? Varen's eyes narrowed, calling. Them is not hope, it is surrender. They are monsters. They scorched a planet into glass because it insulted them. Poisoned an ocean just to kill one enemy. They're worse than the Hollow. A small, sharp voice spoke up from the shadows. Belonging to the tech keeper, Jova. Maybe that's why they're the only ones the Hollow fear? Silence fell again. The ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. A proximity siren screamed. As Hollow dropships entered the upper atmosphere, they've found us, someone whispered. Eris didn't wait for another vote. She crossed to the console, entered the ancient code, and activated the long-dead signal array. The beacon black metal, older than their own species, flight age hummed with a low growl. Lights flickered to life. The message was simple. Coordinates, emergency status, and one line in an ancient tongue. Deathworlders. We need mercy. The signal was launched. It tore through subspace, past the shattered ruins of allied worlds, past drifting war wreckage, past dead stars. It aimed toward the cold, silent corner of the galaxy, where no empire dared explore. Earth's space, forbidden, cursed, quiet. Until now, 3 days passed. Nothing. The Valari survivors moved deeper underground. Food began to run out. Lost hope. Some prayed. The skies turned black as ash clouds from orbital bombardments blocked the sun. It was the end then. Without warning, the sky split open. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a formation. It was one ship. The Harrow-class dreadnought screamed through the sky like a living nightmare. Its hull was obsidian, covered in ancient scars and half-glowing runes. It had no lights, no broadcast, no escort. Just a silent descent straight through. Enemy lines, Hollow fighters scrambled toward it. They vanished before reaching its hull. One crashed, another evaporated. The ship didn't fire. It didn't even acknowledge the Hollow. It just fell like it owned gravity. The ship landed not. Far from the mountain's base, no ceremony, no request to dock, no greeting. A ramp opened, and out walked a human. He wore black armor, not shiny, but scratched and battle-worn. His face was pale, unreadable, with a faint line of scar tissue down one cheek. He had no helmet, no insignia, just calm eyes like cold oceans. He stood in the ash and said nothing. Eris and 2 other Valari approached, flanked by guards trembling in their boots. She stepped forward and opened her mouth, ready to explain, to plead for help. The human raised one hand. Don't speak, he said in flat, perfect Valari. They froze. He looked around at the smoldering mountains, the gray sky, the scorched trees. He knelt, picked up a handful of ash, rubbed it between his fingers. Then he said, You ask for mercy. I will give you war. Eris swallowed hard. Are you alone? No, the man said. He turned to the sky as dozens of tiny black dots broke through the clouds. I brought wolves. The Valari Council watched in horror and awe as the humans deployed. Their soldiers called Reaper's War, no insignias, spoke no words. They moved like shadows, using terrain no Valari could stand on. They ran up walls, dropped from ships with no parachutes, and tore through hollow formations with brutal, calculated fury. No beam weapons, just projectiles, fire, explosives. They bled like flesh, but fought like machines. In the first 6 hours, 5 hollow hives fell. The Valari recorded it all. Not just for history, but because they couldn't understand how. Humans weren't stronger, just ... more relentless. No hesitation, no fear. They didn't fight to win. They fought like there was no other option, and the Hollow who had never retreated began to flee. Even Elder Varen was stunned. They're not soldiers, he whispered, watching a Reaper punch through a Hollow's core. They're predators. Eris didn't smile. She just said, they are from a world where everything kills. They were born to survive hell. At dusk, the human commander stood before the council. The Valari stared at him as if he were a weapon that might go off. He placed a small data shard on the table. Your people are strong. You just forgot how to be dangerous, he said. This has tactical data on Hollow weak points. Learn it fast. Elder Varen finally gathered. Courage. Why help us? Why now? The man looked at him, then said flatly, because your signal reached more than our satellites. It reached her. Eris frowned. The human's face changed just slightly. Our old war AI, we buried her deep after she wiped out a solar system by mistake. We thought she was gone, but your signal woke her, she told us. It was time. A pause, and a single word on his lips, mercy. And in that moment, everyone in the chamber understood humans don't offer mercy. Before the fight, they offer it after the enemy is erased. And now, the erasing had begun. Rain fell in heavy, black drops, not water but ash, soaked in chemical residue from the Hollow bombardments. It hissed on contact with the ground, burning into soil, stone, and steel alike. Across the shattered valley of Celos Ridge, where once stood a city of light, only ruins remained. The sky was a swirling nightmare of gray and red, and the sun, what little of it was left flickered, like a dying torch through clouds of poison. And in the midst of this devastation, a storm broke, apart with thunder that didn't belong to nature. It was mechanical, heavy, and deep, as if the sky itself was cracking under weight it could no longer carry. Out of the clouds came a shape, possibly large, absolutely silent, like a shadow that moved with purpose. No call signs. No energy. Broadcasts, not even heat signatures. It's just a black hole sliding down through acid rain like a falling executioner's blade. The humans had arrived. Again, the Valari who survived in the underground outposts, watched through trembling cameras and broken scopes. This wasn't how Allied fleets traveled. There were no escort ships, no declarations of arrival, no blue flared drives lighting up the atmosphere. The human vessel, labeled the Wraith of Soul in pre-collapse databases, made no sound until it hit the ground, and even then, it didn't crash. It landed. The earth buckled beneath it, as though recognizing its own predator. And as the ash rain hissed down its hull, it simply sat there, still dark, patient, watching. A message came through the emergency channel. Only 2 words: prepare contact. Inside the Valari shelter, deep beneath what used to be Cielo's command, Eris stared at the cracked holoscreen. Her voice shook. Is that the same ship from before? Jova, the tech keeper, nodded slowly. No, this one's worse. She didn't ask how he knew that. Somehow everyone could feel it. Something darker had stepped off that ship. Something that didn't just answer the call, but hunted for it. Moments later, as if on cue, the mountain's outer alarms shut off. Not triggered, just silenced. Lights flickered. Doors unlocked on their own. And before the guards could raise their weapons, the blast doors to the upper world opened themselves. The air that swept in was cold, sterile, unnatural. Then they saw them humans, but not like the last ones. These weren't just soldiers, they were ghosts wrapped in armor. 6 figures walked down the corridor, dripping with rain, not speaking. Their armor was dark gray, matte black, and mismatched, as if each piece had been pulled from a different battlefield. They carried no glowing weapons, no shiny emblems, just heavy scratched rifles slung low, and expressions that didn't change. As they walked through the Volari bunker like it was their own, the lead human took off his helmet. He was younger than the last commander. Short, cropped black hair, a burn mark running from ear to jaw. His eyes were dead emotionless like a machine, but his voice was calm. "I am Lieutenant Merrick. Special Detachment 9, Sol Corp Ghosts. You requested aid. We are your shield." Number 1 responded. They didn't know how. Marek looked around at the Velar leaders. "Where are your active maps? We need to see what remains." Eris stepped forward, forcing words from her mouth. "Why now? Why send you Merrick?" Didn't blink. "Because the Hollow changed their strategy, and so did we." He moved past her and tapped the nearest wall panel. It lit up with static then. Clarity, a holographic projection of the region appeared. The last remaining strongholds, known Hollow movements, civilian safe zones. All mapped. Merrick studied it in silence. 7 hours, he finally said. Eris blinked. "What?" "Hours before this sector falls completely. Hollow swarm clusters inbound from 3 directions. No civilian zones will survive unless we intercept." Elder Varen, who had grown quieter since the last meeting, found his voice again. "How do you know that? Our sensors are still damaged." Merrick didn't look up. "We were watching before we landed." "And you came anyway?" Merrick's eyes flicked toward him, blank, hollow. "We came because we watched." The operation began with no speeches, no rituals, no plans shared with Volari staff. The humans moved like a hive of their own, issuing sharp, short commands between one another in a tongue the Volari translators couldn't process. They deployed drones the size of insects, which spread through the ruins and fed real-time data back into their helmets. They planted signal beacons, mind spheres, and plasma traps in locations the Volari hadn't even mapped yet. Everything was calculated. Everything was fast. Then the Hollow arrived. They didn't come by sky this time. They emerged from beneath, oozing out of fissures, crawling from caves, pouring like black sludge with blades. Thousands of them. Volari. Watchers screamed. The humans didn't move. Marek simply raised his left hand. "Now," said. The mountain screamed as a web of sonic charges detonated all at once. The Hollow horde didn't just die, they disintegrated. Where explosions didn't kill, the humans finished with brutal precision. Marek himself moved like a machine, one shot, one kill every time. Hollow bodies fell like wheat before the scythe. But something was different this time. The Hollow didn't retreat. They adapted in the second wave. They changed form, became faster. Some copied the shape of human armor. Others emitted frequencies that jammed the drones. The fight grew wilder, closer. One Hollow nearly struck Marek, but a Volari civilian, a young medic named Sorrow, leapt in with a mining pick and drove it through the monster's eye. Everything paused for a second. Marek looked down at the medic bleeding. Shaken hand said something no one expected. "Good." It wasn't emotion, it was approval, and that made Sorrow smile. Even as he fell, hours later, the battlefield was quiet again. The Hollow retreat not far. But enough. Bodies of both species lay scattered. The humans regrouped, repaired Rariz. Stood by Merrick, watching him reassemble his rifle in perfect silence. She finally asked, "What do you think of us?" He didn't look up. "You're soft." She flinched. But soft things harden. Pressure makes steel. She turned toward the ruins of their city, and the Hollow, their evolution gone mad. Rage without reason. Purpose without soul. But even they, He paused, clicking a cartridge into place. Learn to run. She narrowed her eyes. Run from what? Marek stood, slung his rifle, looked her dead in the eyes. From us. And in that moment, Eris finally understood what everyone else had feared to say aloud. The Hollow were terrifying, but even they feared something more. The Deathworlders had come, and this time, they weren't leaving. The flames climbed higher than the ruined spires of Nor-El City, painting the black sky in furious orange. Every structure, every monument, every piece of history was swallowed in an inferno.
Oh.
The Valari who had lived there were either dead, scattered, or buried beneath rubble. And above it, all calm, cold, watching hovered a single human gunship. Shaped like a stingray, silent except for the low thrum of its gravity engines. Eris stood on the ridge outside the city, coughing into a rebreather, her eyes wide and burning. From heat and grief, she wasn't crying, not because she didn't want to, but because her tears had already dried. Too many deaths, too much loss. But even now she couldn't look away, because what she saw wasn't just destruction. It was surgical. The human commander, Marek, stood beside her, unbothered by the smoke. His armor was scorched, covered in ash, but he hadn't removed it. He simply stared at the burning city as if calculating something in his head. Eris finally whispered, "Why burn it all? Why not save the wounded?" Marek didn't blink, because there weren't any left to save. The Hollow had already begun. The harvest. The word made her stomach twist. Harvest. That's what the Hollow did when they owned a place. They didn't just kill, they absorbed. Its corpses, memories, technology, all fed into their living machines, their growing hive minds. A city left standing wasn't just a loss. It was a weapon turned against you. You could have warned us, she said quietly, bitterly. I did, Marek said. I told your council this was war at the end of civilization. This was our capital. He turned to her now, eyes flat and unmoved. And now it's your warning. She looked back at the fire. You call this mercy? No, he said. This is what mercy looks like. Earlier that day, the Valari command had begged Marek not to engage the Hollow head-on in Nor-El. They wanted time to evacuate. It's time to organize survivors. But time was something the Hollow never gave. By the time scouts arrived, Nor-El's core was already breached. Hollow nodes, pulsing towers of bone and black metal rose in the center plaza, growing like tumors. They spread fast. And once they activated, the city would become a living fortress. Impossible to retake, so Marek gave the order. Total firebreak. The ghosts of soul-deployed plasma. Burrowers and seismic charges across the fault line under the city. Then they rained thermite from orbit, targeting the Hollow growths with ruthless precision. What didn't burn collapsed. What collapsed, they leveled again. Valari begged him to stop. He said nothing. His eyes never left the coordinates. 100,000 Valari had once lived in Nor-El. Now, only a handful stood watching it vanish, and Marek didn't apologize, because to him, this wasn't cruelty. It was containment inside the human field. Base Jovatha, tech keeper, watched the battle recordings frame by frame. His claws trembled as he rewound a moment where a Hollow brute leapt from a building, only to be blown midair by a hovering drone. Not by targeting, not by luck, by timing. How do they do that? He muttered. How do they always know? Human AI on board the ship answered, because Hollow logic is emotionless, predictable. We learn them by studying ourselves. Jova turned toward the voice interface. Humans are not predictable, exactly, the AI said. It's what makes us perfect enemies. Then it added, and perfect weapons. That night, Marek met with Aris, Elder Verone, and what remained of the Valari Council. The room was dark, lit only by map projectors. Every face showed fear, anger, and exhaustion. Varen was the first to speak. We cannot let you command. The war alone. Marek didn't flinch. Then lead it yourself. We must rebuild while the Hollow are still hunting. That's suicide. We're not soldiers. Marek stood. Slowly. Then become something they fear. Or you won't have anything left to protect. Reese raised her voice. You talk like there's no room for life after this. There isn't, Marek said. Not if you keep fighting like it's still peace. The silence grew thick. And then, for the first time, Marek's tone changed. My home was glassed in the first harvest. We were told to wait, to hide, to hope for allies. None came. He stepped forward, placing a small hologram device on the table. It flickered to life, showing a city once green and alive, then burning, just like Nor-El. That's what hope without action looks like. He clicked the holo off. To know. I won't ask permission to strike. I'll ask forgiveness. When the holo were gone, Varen sat down, broken, silent, and Eris finally understood something terrible. Marek wasn't saving them because he cared. He was saving them so they'd never become him outside. The last flames of Nor-El faded into smoke. Ash drifted across. The stars like falling snow, and above, far in orbit, new signals began to flicker. Not hollow. Something else. A new voice. A third faction, watching, waiting, and preparing to respond. The ground was still warm beneath their boots. Not with fire, but memory. The soil where the city of Nor-El once stood now looked like a graveyard made of glass shiny. Melted fragments of buildings and bone, all fused into jagged black sheets. By human fire. Smoke no longer rose, but a strange hum echoed from beneath the crust, a sound not made by nature, with a hollow. Eris walked in silence beside Marek, her breathing tight inside the rebreather mask. She hated this place, not because it reminded her of what they had lost, but because of what they were now becoming. Survivors, allies, and something far worse. Witnesses. I felt them, she said softly, in the tunnels under the city. Something else was there. Something not hollow. Marek didn't look at her. We know. He didn't say anything. We don't share theories, only facts. She turned, her voice sharp. Is that what this is now? Secrets for the sake of tactics? Marek finally stopped. He looked down at the blackened soil, then motioned toward a fissure just ahead. A crack in the earth that pulsed with dim violet light. Come, he said. It's time you see why Nor-El had to die. The tunnel was unnatural, not just in shape, but design. Smooth, spiraled, like it had been melted through the rock by something intelligent. The humans had already secured the entrance, their drones. Crawling along the ceiling, scanning for movement. Marek ducked into the dark without hesitation. Eris followed, heart racing. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Not freezing hollow, like it had never been touched by life. And then they reached it. A chamber, perfectly circular, carved into the deep stone beneath Nor-El, and in the center, spire. It pulsed with light and emitted a faint rhythmic pulse-like. A heartbeat made of radio static. It wasn't hollow. It wasn't Valari. And it sure as death wasn't human. Jova stood beside it, holding a trembling scanner. His voice was weak. It's not from this galaxy. Marek nodded. Call them Watchers. Eris stared. Aliens. Another species? No, he said. Not species. Remnants. Something older than language. Older than stars. The spire pulsed again this time. Louder. Marek turned to her. We found 3 across the warfront. This is the 4th. Each time we destroy a hollow colony, one appears in the ashes. Eris stepped closer. But why? You think they're listening, waiting, maybe even judging? Judging what? Our decisions. Her blood ran cold. Back at the forward base, Valari leaders demanded answers. You knew about this? Aldebaran shouted, slamming his claw on the table. And you burned our city anyway? Marek remained calm. The spires only appear. After the hollow fully assimilate a region, if we hadn't destroyed Nor-El, the spire wouldn't have emerged. We needed it visible. Why not capture it? You think we haven't tried? Marek leaned forward, voice low. Every time. We moved one. It collapsed into ash. Every time we touched the core, soldiers went mad. The only pattern we found is this. They come when we end something completely. No survivors. No hesitation. Only fire. The room fell into silence. Eris whispered. So, They're watching how we end things. Marek nodded. And that means they're waiting for a choice. That night, Marek made another proposal, a joint task force. Valari and humans dashed together, not just in defense and in offense. In cleansing, burn the hollow nests, purge the lost zones, show the Watchers we are not prey. The Valari Council hesitated. Eris didn't. I'll lead the first team, she said. But I want to choose who comes. Marek stared at her for a long time, then nodded. You've already started to understand. Understand what? That this wasn't just a war anymore. It was a test. And the battlefield was only the beginning. The first joint strike hit the hollow root nest in the Dagari. Wastes. A zone long abandoned by both races. Underground hives. Twisted trees fed by dead cities. The humans deployed with flamethrowers and heavy kinetic weapons. The Valari brought tunneling tech and sonar shock bombs. Eris led from the front. Marek watched from orbit. They fought side by side, cutting through nightmare creatures that screeched in mimicry of their victims. And when the final node was destroyed, the team pulled back and waited. The spire emerged 2 hours later, identical in design, but this time, something changed. A shape formed at the top of the Spira hologram, a being of shifting light, no face, no features. Just presence, and then it spoke. 3 words. Not in any known language, but translated instantly across every human and Valari system. You choose fire. Panic spread in the Valari camps. Some thought it was a warning, others a message of approval. Jova argued with every technician, demanding translation logs. Elder Varen called it a trap, but Eris, she just stood still, replaying the words. Again and again, you choose fire. What if the Watchers weren't enemies? What if they were offering a mirror? A reflection of the path both species were now walking. And fire was the answer they expected. Later, under the dead stars, Eris met Marek on the edge of the canyon. You knew they'd speak. I hoped, he said. So what now? Marek looked to the east, where the hollow swarms still bred in black towers. Now we choose again. Eris hesitated, then asked the question she feared most. What if one day they ask us to burn something we love? Marek didn't answer because, deep down, they both knew mercy wasn't coming, and every choice from now on would carve who they became, one spire at a time. The words still echoed days later. You choose fire. Simple, cold, terrifying. The Watcher's message hadn't just been a transmission, it had been a judgment. A mirror held up to 2 civilizations standing on the edge of survival. And 4. The first time in generations, both humans and Valari realized they were not alone in the war. Something older, something silent and watching, had noticed them, and it had spoken. But no one truly understood what it meant. In the deep hollow of a ruined starship, orbiting the burned world below, Eris sat across from Marek, the human war commander. Was motionless, eyes locked on a projection of the Watcher spire. His armor was half removed, revealing thick scars and cybernetic plates beneath. He looked tired, but not weak. They've never spoken before? Eris asked. Not once, Marek said. We've seen over 24 spires across collapsed. War zones, they hum, they pulse, they record, but never speak. I know. Because we responded, Marek said quietly. Not just by burning hollow nests, but by unifying, by choosing. Eris frowned. You think the Watchers reward that? Think they observe it? Reward, punish doesn't matter. They test. And they listen. She stood pacing. And what happens if we speak back? Marek didn't answer, because the truth was they already had. 3 days after the Watcher spoke, something changed. Valari forward scouts, those closest to the spire, began reporting symptoms. Headaches. Dreams of stars flickering like dying. Candles, whispers in their own minds. Some were terrified. Others said they felt, called Jova, the Valari technician, ran diagnostics. It's like a song, he said, showing the signal. They're not using sound, they're using gravity pulses. Each one contains patterns, almost like language, encrypted, Eris asked. No, interpretable, but only by minds that have seen loss. That word made Merrick stop. He approached the scanner slowly, reading the data. You mean trauma? Yes. Memory shaped by fear. They're selective. They don't talk to logic. They talk to pain. Long silence filled the room. Then Merrick turned toward the transmission and gave a single order. Talk back. The humans didn't use words. They used images, scenes of burning cities, defeats, sacrifices, not victory but resistance. Eris added her own footage to of Norel, of the day the hollow tore her skies apart. Pain woven into signal. Sorrow repackaged as message. Then they broadcast it back into the spire, and waited hours. Past then came the second response. Not words this time, but a vision. Projected across every human, an LRE system linked to the spire's frequency. Battlefield, covered in hollow corpses, and at the center a black sun, twisting, breathing, feeding on light. Then the image vanished, and the transmission. Merrick gathered the task force. They're showing us what's coming. Another hollow fleet? Varun asked. No, Eris said, voice tense. Something worse. They turned toward her. I felt it, she whispered. That thing, the sun. It wasn't just consuming stars. It was becoming something else. Arak added grimly, the hollow are evolving, or being prepared. Prepared for what? Jova asked, and that's when Marek said it. For us to fail. That night, Marek met Eris alone beneath the orbital hangar. The stars above them were faint, flickering. They're pushing us to a line, Eris said. And every time we answer, they raise the stakes. Marek nodded. And one day they'll ask us a final question. She turned to him. What question? He looked at her for a long moment, then said, What are you willing to become, to win? The silence between them was heavier than any weapon, because they both already knew the answer. The next morning, human scout team vanished. Last location. Near a dormant hollow node, recently destroyed, recovery units were sent. What they found wasn't wreckage. It was a message, carved into the walls of a half-melted bunker. Not by hand, not by machine, but by gravitational displacement. Etched with atomic precision, you speak now, you choose still. Soon you pay. Jova stared at it, stunned. They know we're answering. Reese felt a chill. They're not just watching, she said. They're judging us. Marek clenched his fists. And it's time we judge them too. The final scene came just before nightfall. Another spire appeared, but not on. A hollow-infested world, this one emerged in the heart of a human colony world. No war, no enemy, no destruction. Just silence. The ground cracked. Light pulsed upward. And, without warning, the spire formed in the middle of a child's playground. It didn't speak. It didn't hum. It just stood, watching, waiting. A choice had been made, and the price of speaking back was finally arriving. The spire was gone, but the message it left behind still echoed through every mind that had stood near it. Not yet. 2 words. Soft. Final. Hanging like a blade over their heads. They had answered the Watchers. United as they were meant to. But unity alone would not save them, because something else had wakened. Something older than the hollow, something that remembered. 3 days after the spire vanished, a signal was received on every human and Valari channel. Not a voice, not a warning. It was a map, an old one. Dust-covered star paths, dead systems, burned planets. But at the center, something new. A name in a forgotten dialect neither species should have known. Indiel Jova was the first to recognize it. It means remains that speak. What is it? Merrick asked. Not a world. A graveyard. He pointed to a cluster of long-dead stars. There were once 12 civilizations there, all extinct. And now something is calling us there, the council protested. Develari feared a trap. The humans feared another test. But Marek knew better. This isn't a test anymore, he said. It's a summons. To what? Varen asked. A battlefield? No, Eris said. A memory. They launched within the week, a joint fleet, small and silent, like mourners attending a funeral they didn't understand. Bree sat in, the lead ship, her fingers resting on a console as stars passed by. Eandriel waited beyond the edge. Of all known maps, where the past still burned, they arrived to find dust, a system of dead stars, orbiting nothing. Every planet shattered, stripped bare, no light, no warmth, no signs of war, just absence. And then they saw it. The monument, a ring miles wide, floating in space, built of obsidian and bones. Human bones, Valari bones, and others. Species long. Lost to time. The ship's sensors buzzed with static, then cleared. A signal came through. This time, wait. Was not the Watchers. It was a chorus. Thousands of voices layered, ancient, all saying the same thing. We remember you. Inside the ring was a station abandoned, dark. Reese, Marek, and Jova led the boarding team. No gravity, no life. Just corridors of dust and sealed doors that hissed open at their presence. At the heart of the station was a chamber filled with floating light. Memories not, video not data, experiences. The chamber showed them wars, joys, collapses, whole civilizations. Singing before they fell, some laughed, some screamed. But every memory ended the same way. A shadow falling across the stars. And then Ash Eris stepped into the center of the room. It reacted. Light surged. The air thrummed. Then a voice not. The Watchers. Something older. You lived because we failed. You burned because we tried to survive. She dropped to her knees. Overwhelmed by pain not her own, visions flooded her mind. Cities turned to glass. Oceans boiled dry. Voices screaming for salvation that never came. And at the center of it, Ola's single word carved in fire. Human Merrick. Helped her up. What did it show you? Everything. They've seen us before. Jova paled. No, not us, but something like us. He pointed to the walls. Thousands of names were etched in the stone, some familiar, others unpronounceable. But in the middle, one word pulsed with heat. Earth. Everyone froze. They knew about us before we ever left our planet, Eris whispered. The Watchers didn't find us by accident. They remembered us. Merrick said it out loud. We're not the first, but we might be the last. Zachorus. Returned, you stand in ashes, shaped by those before you. The Hollow are not your enemy. They are your heirs. And you are the mistake we left behind. Silence followed, then the lights died. The chamber went dark. Outside, the station began to break apart, slowly. Like a dying breath, they fled, and behind them, the ring drifted silently, scattering its bones into the void. Back aboard the ship, Eris stared at the stars. They created the Hollow, she said quietly. Marek nodded. To survive. Instead, she whispered, they became something worse. She turned to him. The Watchers aren't gods, they're witnesses. Keeping score, counting ends, and we're just... Next. Jova looked up from his console. We received one final message. They turned to him. It just says, there. Already here. Every colony world went silent within hours. No weapons fired, no screams, just silence. Ships returned to find cities empty, no bodies. No signs of battle. Only one thing remained. Ash formed into shapes. Statues of humans, of Velari, of those who had tried to speak. And every statue had a word etched into its base. Remember, because the ashes knew their names, and the fire had only just begun. The spire in the playground never moved, never blinked, never spoke. It simply was. A black needle of stone and shadow piercing the sky where children once laughed. A monument to something older than time and colder than war. And it sat there, unmoving, for 3 full days. The humans quarantined the colony immediately. No one in, no one out. Drones circled overhead while military teams built walls and reinforced bunkers. The Valari sent emissaries to observe, but not to help. Not this time. They were afraid. And maybe they were right to be. Because something was coming through, and they all knew it. Eris stood in the observation chamber, watching the spire through thick glass. Her reflection stared back at hurt, weathered, scarred by decisions she hadn't even made yet. "This is different," she said softly. "It didn't follow destruction. It came to peace." Marek stood beside her, arms crossed. There. Escalating. Why? To see how we react? She turned to him, voice heavy. "And what happens if we react wrong?" He didn't look at her. "Then we're no longer being tested. We're being ended." That night something emerged, not from the spire, but from beneath it. The soil cracked open, concrete fractured, and out of the broken ground rose a shape, humanoid, not hollow, not machine, not natural. It looked human mostly, but too tall, too still. Its skin was pale gray, veined with black light. Its eyes were orbs of mirrored glass. No mouth, no nose. It's just the impression of a face. A child's drawing of a person made real, and it walked directly to the perimeter. The guards opened. Fire, nothing happened. Bullets melted midair. Lasers bent around it like frightened snakes. And still, it walked, until it reached the barrier. Then, it stopped, and it spoke, without moving its mouth, without making a sound. But everyone within 100 miles heard it in their mind. "You asked? Now understand." Marek stared at the footage, stunned. "It's a construct." "No," Jova whispered. "It's a messenger." "Of what?" "Judgment." The construct didn't attack. It didn't threaten. It just stood there, transmitting. One repeating message into every system. Your mercy is weakness. Your survival is cruelty. Your choices shape your end. Alari leaders panicked. Some wanted to evacuate the entire sector. Others proposed detonating the spire with nuclear force. Aris said nothing, because she understood now the Watchers weren't invaders. They were observers of extinction, and they had seen this before. In the following days, more appeared. Not spires, not messengers, but visions. Every soldier on the front began dreaming the same dream. A world with no stars, no war, no hollow, just endless silence, lifeless cities, frozen oceans, no people, no sound. And at the center of it all, a mirrored statue of themselves. Each dream was different, but always ended the same. They stood alone, at the edge of nothing, a monument to their own extinction. And then a whisper, "You chose fire. Fire consumes. Now burn." Back in orbit, Marek paced the command deck. "They're pushing us toward something, trying to break us." Reese nodded slowly, "or trying to reveal us." He stopped. "Explain." She stepped to the window, staring down at the now sealed colony. "We think they're showing us the future. But what if they're not? What if they're showing us who we already are? Hollow, violent, alone." Shh. Entered, holding a report. The construct disappeared. How? No one saw it move. No heat, no sound. It's just gone. Marek took the datapad, eyes scanning the logs. "What's this at the end?" He asked. Jova hesitated. "A new signal, short, repeating every hour." "What does it say?" Jova swallowed. "Begin your last choice." The alliance began to fracture. Valari factions argued over abandoning Earth entirely. Human generals suggested preemptive strikes on any world showing Watcher signals before the spires could arrive. Eris stood in the War Council chamber, watching them tear each other apart with words and fear. "This is what they want," she said. Everyone turned. "They don't want us to die?" "Not yet. They want to see what will become before we do." Marek stepped forward. "Then we give them something they've never seen." "And what's that?" Varen snapped. Marek looked around, cold determination in his voice, unity in the face of extinction. A plan formed. A final test. They would send a team human and Valari to the spire site, not to destroy it, not to interrogate it, but to speak to it together. Eris volunteered. Of course she did. She knew it would be her The Watchers weren't testing machines. They were testing hearts, and hers had been broken enough to pass. As the shuttle descended onto the silent colony, Eris sat beside Jova, her hands steady. Around her were soldiers, scientists, and scholars, each carrying a truth inside them. The spire loomed below, unchanged, untouched, waiting the moment she stepped onto the ground. The air shifted. The spire began to pulse. 1 beat, 2, 3, and then the voice returned. "This is your last question." Eris stepped forward and answered, not with words, but with memory. She removed her helmet, let the wind touch her face, and she spoke her story of loss of choice, of burning cities and shattered families. Then she asked only one thing: "Are we already too late?" The spire stopped pulsing. Silence. Then a whisper. "Not yet." And then it vanished. Not exploded, not collapsed, vanished, gone, leaving nothing behind but soft wind and silence, back in orbit. Marek stared at the live feed in disbelief. "They're giving us time. Or one last chance," Eris said quietly. The Watchers had listened, but the test wasn't over. The next move was theirs, and the thing that answered them back had only just begun to speak. The stars looked the same, peaceful, eternal, but everyone who stared up at them now knew better, because they had seen behind the stars. They had heard the voices in the dark. They had watched worlds die without a sound, and now the silence. Coming for them, the statues appeared overnight across Earth, Mars, even old Valari, made of ash and dust, but they never blew away. Everyone showed a human or a Valari screaming silently, reaching upward. Some knelt, some stood tall, some pointed into the sky, but they all had the same single word carved into their base. Why? No answers came, just the empty wind, and the sense that someone or something was watching, still waiting, still judging. Because now there were no more tests, only truth. And the truth was this: it was already too late. Eris stood in the last war council on Earth, a bunker dug deep beneath the Rockies. No more politics, no more lies, just people, tired, afraid, angry. Valari stood beside humans known not because of treaties, but because they had nothing else left. The Hollow are no longer attacking, Marek said. They're searching. For what? Someone. Asked. Jova answered from a dark corner of the room. Answers. He stepped forward, holding a tablet. The Hollow had begun speaking. Not to us, to each other. Language, Eris asked. No, code, a memory web, a library of grief. We're in it. He tapped the screen. 1,000 human faces stared back. Some were from now, some were from before humanity had even left Earth. Some were from times not yet happened. They know our future, Jova whispered. They've already lived it. Hollow did not come with fire. They came with silence. Ships began vanishing. Worlds turned dark, and in their place monuments, not ash this time, not statues, mirrors, giant towers of glass and steel, standing alone, reflecting nothing. Even in sunlight, they showed no reflection, just void, and when people looked into them, they saw themselves, bleeding, alone, screaming, broken. Eris walked the ruins of New Oslo where the first mirror was found. The city was gone, not destroyed, just missing. The buildings were intact, but there were no people, not even bones. And at the center of it all, the mirror pulsed. Humming softly, when she stepped near, it spoke, not with sound, not in mind, but in feeling. You killed your gods. You buried your hope. You taught us to be like you. And now, only monsters remain. She fell to her knees. Shaking, the truth hit her like a wave of acid. The Hollow were not a failure. They were a lesson, a reflection. Humanity had become the blueprint for the next extinction. The Alliance, correct. Some humans begged to surrender. Some Valari demanded retaliation. But nothing they did mattered, because the mirrors kept appearing one by one. on every world, until only Earth remained untouched. For now, Merrick stood at the edge of Earth's orbit, staring at the final wave. Thousands of hollow ships, but no weapons were active. Just engines, just silence. They were not coming to fight. They were coming to end. And he understood then. They had become something far worse than monsters. They had become teachers of how to burn inside the final war chamber. Reese, Merrick, and Jova made a decision. No nukes, no counterattacks, no screams, just one signal. They transmitted it on every channel, every frequency, to the hollow, to the watchers, to whatever waited in the dark. It contained no plea, no anger, just a single line of code. We see you. We see ourselves. We were wrong. Then they turned off all their weapons and waited. The hollow fleet reached Earth. No ships burned, no people screamed. The sky turned black, and then it began to rain. Not water, not ash, but memories. They fell gently, like snow. Whispers in every ear, visions in every eye. Mothers holding children, soldiers throwing down rifles, old enemies laughing around fires. Humanity's best moments. Valari peace. Songs. The first handshake between species. The first baby born on Mars. The first time they chose not to fight. And when the memories stopped falling, the mirrors disappeared. The holoships stopped. They hovered, and then turned away one by one, drifting back into the void. Gone. No words, no messages, only silence. Jova wept. What does it mean? Merrick asked, voice hoarse. Era smiled through tears. It means we weren't monsters after all. She looked up at the stars. They just needed to remember who they were. And we were their mirror. Years passed. The Watchers never returned. The hollow disappeared. The statues crumbled. But the memories remained. Not just in data, not in machines, in people, because they had stood at the edge of extinction, chosen to reflect hope instead of horror. They had been Deathworlders, monsters, but in the end, had chosen mercy, and that had changed everything.